I'm so excited to be joining you today for our third lesson as we are following our road to Easter. And I hope you've enjoyed getting a chance to explore these lessons with me. And I also hope that you've enjoyed your St. Patrick's Day goodies. And I hope that you enjoyed being able to have a special treat and to follow along with those crafts. So today we are going to continue to talk about that path that Jesus took as he led to Easter. And I want us to think as we get started today, I want us to all think about who our good friends are. I want us to think about what makes a good friend. I want everyone to think about what makes a good friend. Now, when you're thinking about what makes a good friend, I'm sure there's some things that pop in your head. Maybe some things like trustworthy. Maybe someone who's kind. Maybe someone who's fun to be around. Might make you laugh. Well, when I'm thinking about being a good friend, something that I really like to think about is someone who is loyal. Who is loyal. And this is a big word. Now, we use this word loyal when we're talking about friendship, or maybe when we're talking about a team that we like. I know some of you out there, you are big, loyal Tiger fans. I know, I'm talking to you. Our family, we are really loyal North Carolina Tar Heel fans. I know. And if we were going to be very loyal to our team, we cannot ever wear a Duke Blue Devil t-shirt. We just couldn't. We couldn't betray our team and not be loyal to our team. We would have to only wear North Carolina blue. I would never not be loyal. And when we think of that, it seems so silly for us to change our mind so quickly just to wear another team shirt. But we're going to find today that someone was disloyal, not loyal to a friend, for something way bigger than just a sports team. You see, our story today is when we see the plot against Jesus. The plot against Jesus. Now, when I look at this picture, it's kind of hard at first to figure out who might be in this picture. Now, we can tell that these are going to be those Pharisees and those Jewish leaders that were really trying to plot and plan against, trying to put an end to what Jesus was teaching and to try to get rid of him once and for all. But who is this? Who is this? You see, that's really where our story is going to take place. It's with this man. Now, our story takes place not long after Lazarus had been raised from the dead. Now, that's not really our story today, but it's important for us to know what was going on. And see, at this time, it wasn't very far after that because the religious leaders at that time had heard about Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. And see, they did not like Jesus. They weren't very believing of what he was doing, and that led them to want to plan and plot against him. But see, these people, these men, these religious leaders knew that there were a lot of people following Jesus. And they knew that if they did anything to try to make them encourage an arrest of Jesus or anything that would have gone against Jesus would have upset the people at that time. And see, being leaders at that time, they knew that there was no way that they could go against Jesus without starting some kind of riot or people to start arguing or maybe going against the religious leaders. So that's when it really became a plot or a plan to try to arrest Jesus. Now, this is where this man comes in. You see, this man was one of Jesus' disciples. He was someone who had seen the miracles that Jesus had performed. He had seen Jesus feed the 5,000. You see, he was so close to Jesus, he was actually in charge of the money. He was in charge of the collection of that the disciples would have, the money that they would have had. And see, this man was Judas. And see, Judas was a disciple just like every other disciple. He spent time with Jesus. He let Jesus teach him. He saw the miracles. He knew who Jesus was. But see, at this time, he became tempted by something more than just his loyalty to Jesus. You see, we don't know if it was exactly the money that tempted him or what exactly caused him, other than the temptation of Satan to get him to betray or to become disloyal to Jesus. But he did. He actually went to the leaders and said, "What would you give me if I turned Jesus over to you?" I want us to think about that question. What would you give me if I turned Jesus over to you? Sounds like such a silly, small question when we think about what it ended up doing. But with that question, Judas agreed to betray Jesus. The religious leaders said, "We will give you 30 pieces of silver." Think about that. 30 pieces of silver. I'm not good with relating that money to modern day, but let's just think $30. Let's make it even bigger. Let's think $300 to give over Jesus. Now I want us to think about that for a minute. When we hear that, we are so quick to think, why, Judas? Why would you do that? He was your friend. Even above all, even if you were a little doubtful that he was who he said he was still someone you spent time with. Someone that you heard teach, someone you had gotten to know. And you betrayed him for 30 pieces of silver. Now we know that this was part of God's plan, and it was part of what Jesus knew was going to happen. But we can learn a lot about Jesus and Judas at this time. You see, Judas was tempted away by that 30 pieces of silver, but I don't think we're much different. There's times we are tempted away. There's times where we are not very loyal. Now, when I think of this word loyal, we do think of our friendships, but we should actually be thinking of our relationship with Jesus. We should be loyal to him. There's some ways we can think of being loyal to him. When we come to church, when we are studying our Bible and having our Bible study like we are now, we're being loyal to him and to his word. What about when we make fun of other people? Are we being loyal to him? What if when we do other things that we know are wrong, we're not being loyal to him? You see, we learn in this story about what it means to truly be loyal, and how we are tempted at times to give Jesus away just for something else that may seem good right now. But from what we learn from Judas is it's always worth much less than what we're given. And you see, this was just the beginning of that plot to arrest Jesus. And we see that Judas was one part of that plot. We also see later on, if you continue to read about Judas, he does go to betray Jesus with a simple kiss. Judas does later regret what he did, but unfortunately, Judas doesn't repent. It doesn't seem to have a very good ending for Judas. But thankfully, we can have a different ending than Judas did. Even though there are times we do not make the right choice, there are times we're not loyal, we know that God forgives us. You see, because of what Jesus did, we can be forgiven for those times when we aren't loyal. And we learn from Judas that it's not worth what might seem like something we want right now. It's never worth it to betray or to be disloyal to Jesus. Now, this story is actually in a couple of different books of the Bible. As we remember our first four books of the New Testament are the books that tell us about Jesus' life. And those are called the Gospels, the Good News books. Okay? And those are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And our story today was based on stories that were actually within each of those Gospels. So I hope that you can have a chance to go back and read a little bit more about Judas, but hopefully learn that Jesus also knew that Judas was going to forgive him. And he loved him, and he cared for him. And we'll talk about that next week, that Jesus loved him even knowing what he was doing to betray him. And that's where we learn about the greatest of all, Jesus' love. And we'll keep learning about that each week. Now, I know these next few lessons, they're going to be really teaching us a lot about what Jesus gave for us in Easter. So I hope you don't miss any of these weeks leading up. And you only have, I think, one more craft after this week in our March bag. And so I am so excited about the April bags because they'll have a special Easter treat for you guys on Good Friday. And so that's coming up in just a couple of weeks. So to wrap up today's lesson, I want to make sure we have our prayer time. And I am sure that you guys have prayer requests. So if you do, please feel free to send those to us because I would love to be able to pray specifically for you guys. And I'd love to be able to rejoice in the things that I know are happening in your lives as well. Because that's one of the times that I miss so much in our sweet fellowship is being able to enjoy this time together and being able to pray. But thankfully, we can pray together even though we're at two different places. So you can pray at the same time that I'm praying. It's like we're joining together and saying one big prayer together. So let's just think for a minute about any of those requests that we might have, some things that we want to pray for together. So if you'll think for just a minute, we can all share those. I'm going to pray for us, and I want you to think about those requests, and it's like we're saying one big prayer together. Dear Lord, I just want to thank you so much for your son, and thank you for this season that we get to stop and reflect on the things that you did for us, and just the gift that you gave and your sacrifice, and just the hope that it brings all of us. And Lord, I know that there are many requests that our friends have, those that I may not know about at this moment, but I know that you do. And Lord, I just pray that you will just cover these requests and that you will just touch the hearts of each of our friends as they're listening to these messages and as they are lifting up these requests to you. And Lord, I just pray that you'll continue to watch over our friends as we're not able to join together. But I pray, Lord, that we'll be able to join back together in the future, and that you'll just watch over us and care for us while we are apart. In your awesome and holy name, amen. Now, if you want to read more about this story, it is in Matthew 26, Mark 14, Luke 22, and John 11, starting in verse 45. So until next week, see you later.